Pat yourself on the back because you are right here, right now, for a reason. Welcome to the On Purpose podcast, where together we will empower ourselves and others to live lives with more passion and purpose. How you doing this morning, Jared?
Honestly, man, happy. It's just with this crazy time going on, anytime I get to wake up and I know I have a podcast, we get to interact first thing in the morning, it's just changes my energy a little bit. How
Good.
about you, buddy?
Good, man. I'm happy too. I'm feeling good today. Had a heavy day yesterday. I think the effects are compounding of not having that human interaction, but I'm happy, grateful to be alive. Still have a little bit of work and getting after it.
Yeah, and what just for the listeners, by the time they hear this, because we're a little bit ahead in production, we're like about week 2 now of this stay-at-home order.
Yeah, since the stay-at-home order, but things have been closed for about 3 weeks now. 3 or 4, few things closed.
I'll be honest, I can't even keep track because if I start looking at like how much more time we have in this and stuff, it just doesn't serve us.
Right.
But I am thankful. That's what I wrote about this morning. I'm grateful for technology, so we can still at least interact like this. And then I started thinking about this. I'm really grateful for the guy that came up with the idea that this was possible, and the person that helped believe in him. Because I think about like way back in the day, if somebody was like, "Hey, I think we can talk to each other through these computers," the first person he pitched that idea to would have been like, "No, it's the dumbest idea. We're gonna stay with these phones with these cords because this is the way to go." You know what I mean? Like, what if they wouldn't have believed in him or encouraged him? And
Dude,
uh,
in the book Think and Grow Rich, it talks about one of the first guys who said we can have like telecommunications with telephones and stuff. His friends took him to the hospital to get checked out because they thought he was psycho. It's
I
in
believe it.
it's
I
in Think and
remember
Grow Rich.
the Kodak story, right? Like Kodak was a huge plant in Windsor. It employed thousands of people. And they didn't believe digital was going to stick, and they refused to migrate from film-based cameras to digital, and now you look at them, nobody even knows who Kodak is.
Dang.
Yeah, so I'm grateful, man, and I'm just excited. I'm glad we get to do the podcast. I'm glad we get to interact with people, still reach them even in this time of isolation.
Yeah, thank God for Zoom. For real,
I
grateful for
wish I'd
that too.
invested in Zoom stock before all this.
Yeah, right. Everyone's on Zoom now.
Golly. But yeah, it's good, man. What'd you think of Pastor Darren on that interview? I know you were looking forward to that, especially because you're more versed in the religion than I am. What'd you think of that one?
Man, I loved it. I think what they're doing is really, really cool. You know, targeting a certain culture, cowboy culture for religion. I think it's terrific because religion is there's so much good in there, man. There's so many awesome stories. There's so many incredible lessons. The thing is, it's fucking hard to read. You know, you open the Bible or the Quran, it's like, what am I reading? You know, especially in today's language, it's just so outdated. But the
Yeah.
messages are so good. But hey, you throw a little cowboy symbol on your church. You know, you got King Ranches in the parking lot, guys showing up. But that's going to attract that culture, and I think it's great. You know, you don't see stuff like, you know, hip hop church or all the culture based churches. I think it's a genius idea, and my favorite takeaway from what he said is that when you are serving, that's when you're in God's territory. That's when you're being godly, is when you're serving others. And I couldn't agree more. I loved how he talked about when a waitress tips you poorly, that's when you should, or treats you
Serves you.
poorly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's when you should give her an even bigger tip because she may need it. So I loved his philosophy, definitely a godly man, and had some good things to share. How about you? What did you take away from that?
I agree with you on that stuff. And I mean, those were all important things. And I really loved the message. But I'll be honest with you, I was blown away at the fact he went to a doctor's appointment for an ingrown toenail and came out with a Parkinson's diagnosis.
Yeah, that's
Right?
wild.
Like I was just like, oh my gosh. And I loved him sharing that story and being honest that he went through darkness and depression and um because he's so young to have Parkinson's. And I love the fact that he's very public with it and he's leading through it, not kind of hiding from it. So, yeah, I think I hope our community gets a lot out of that episode, and please send us what your takeaways were and let us know what you liked about it.
Definitely. Well, I'm really excited to get into today's talk. I think that this is exactly what the universe is trying to get us to do. And the title of today's episode is Just Be. Just be. Not be your best, not be more, not be better, not be
Dude,
anything.
you have a lot of B's in your world, don't you?
I do, man.
Right, that's your like power letter or something.
It is. I mean, my last name, Abuzalam, in freshman football, I got nicknamed Boozy because my Texas football coach, he'd be like, "Hey, good job, Abuz." And then one day he pulled me aside from practice. He's like, "Listen, Abuzalam, I'm having a hard time saying your name out there when you're doing good. You're doing good. I'm having a hard time, but we got to come up with a nickname for you, man. I'm having a hard time." He's like, "How you like Boozy? I've been thinking about this. How you like Boozy?" And I was like, yeah, that's pretty cool. And ever since then, it stuck. So I was even as a freshman in high school, man. I was always very interested in money and wealth. So then I became Boozy Bundles. So that
Oh,
was my name. That was my freestyle name. Whenever we would like freestyle rap in the locker room, like Boozy Bundles
yeah.
coming through. So yeah. So Boozy B, man, that was my
Hey, dude,
name.
I like
B's
that
everywhere.
Texas accent. You're gonna have to do that more often.
That's my coach's accent, man. Coach Keith.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I don't don't disagree. I think how many times had people talked negatively about technology or always in technology, always on this, always on that, always on the grind, on the hustle, and we weren't taking time, we weren't appreciating what was around us. So I don't disagree with you that maybe this is the world's way of making everybody have some time to really reflect on our lives and what we're doing, and forcing you to deal with some of the quietness and the just being still,
Yeah.
which is something I'm not very good at.
Me too, man. I'm definitely a high energy, wound up person, and I think so. So let's before we really hop into this, let's talk about what exactly does it mean to just be? Like when you hear that, Jared, what does that mean to you?
For me, I would say just being means just being present and not not spending this moment thinking about my next moment, or
Mm-hmm.
not spending, like when you're talking to me in your Texas accent, not thinking about, okay, what accent can I come back with, but just really just
Mm,
enjoying that. Excuse me. And I know I'm guilty of it. I think a lot of us are, is we don't stay in the moments. We're always trying to forecast the next one or look ahead. So to me, that's what it means. It's really just stopping and enjoying like this one moment right here.
yeah.
And and it's crazy because it's so cliche, but your life is made up of those small moments.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you look back, I mean, there's a couple big things in life: getting married, having kids, that huge breakthrough in a business. I mean, those are big. But for the majority of what you're going to remember is that small moment.
Mm-hmm.
Yet we overlook them all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's incredible, and I agree. That's the same definition that I have, to not be thinking, because we spend so much of our time thinking about the past or the future. And like you said, even in conversations, it's so easy to where, like, okay, hear an accent. I love that example of like you're hearing an accent and then think of like, oh, what accent am I going to come up with? And then you're literally having a conversation in your head while others are speaking to you. So it's being mindful. And I think about the activities, it's typically things that force you to be mindful that you really, really enjoy doing, like MMA. You better not be thinking about the past or the future while you're training MMA, or you're going to get punched in the face. It forces you to just be in the moment, to be
And I would
very present.
say, yeah, I agree. I agree with that. But I would also say, Like especially sports analogies, right? We've practiced it forever, right? Like the person that has a bad round, let's say with MMA, let's say with boxing, you have a bad round and you don't shake it off. You go out to the next round still thinking about your last bad round, and then you have another one, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we see that all the time. It's called compounding mistakes, right? It's just like compounding interest. People make a mistake at one moment, and instead of letting it go and enjoying the next moment or performing in the next moment, they're dragging this behind them. Right. And it goes back to a lot of the episodes we've talked about where people are still living life with regret about what they did when they're 18 and now they're in their 30s, they're in their 40s, right? They're not really in the moments anymore because they're still thinking about all that past. So to me, that's really what being is. It's kind of freeing, right? Because you free yourself of the past and you take the weight of the future away and you just really sit in the moment. And I know I struggle with that because for me, a lot of times I feel like, okay, I should be doing something to propel the future, right? I should be doing something that moves me forward, moves my family forward, moves our businesses forward. But then when I really stop and think about it, like enjoying those moments and getting the most out of this conversation, being present is actually one of the best things you can do to propel yourself forward.
Mm-hmm. Right. And we can't, we have to think about the future. We have to think about the past. Like that's part of life. But I think we get so entangled that we forget how to just be. There's a study that shows uh, it's like in less than 10 minutes, people are told to sit in a room with a button to where they can shock themselves. And they're not told how long they're going to be in there. Dude, it's like overwhelming. Like 90 something percent of these people shock themselves within 10 minutes just to feel something. Because one of the hardest things for people in today's society to do is just to sit in a room and be still. Just being doesn't mean watching Netflix or listening to music or listening to a podcast. No, just being means very in the present moment. I mean, extremely mindful to where you pick up a pen and you're like, okay, like I'm clicking the pen, I'm writing here. I'm looking like you're very with every action that you're doing, or you're looking up and you're like, oh, you're noticing the wood, the brick. You're here. You're right here in the moment. You're not,
Yeah.
your mind isn't having thoughts. You're mindful, you're present. And it's extremely difficult to do for a lot of us.
But we know the importance of it, right? And like just listening to you describe that, because we're both sports fans, I think back to Michael Jordan and the NBA Finals against the Utah Jazz when he literally hit every shot. He was taking three pointer after three pointer, and they asked him like, how was this happening? He's like, I was just full. I was in the zone, and the basket seemed like it was this big, and I can't miss. Well, that zone that athletes talk about is the present, right? They're not worried about the shot they missed or the next one they're going to take. They're literally living in every single small moment. And I think sometimes in life, we forget to live in the moments because we get so caught up, whether it's comparison of wanting to achieve as much as our neighbors, or if I don't appear to be doing this, I'm not working as hard as that guy. We get caught up in a lot of that and we miss. And something you told me the other day that really stuck with me is going on my walk or going on my run with no music, just so I could hear like each footstep hit the gravel. I could hear the cows. I could feel the breeze, right? Because when I put in a podcast, yeah, I'm pushing my mind, I'm getting some additional information, but I'm actually doing the opposite of what you were talking about, Ollie. I'm not being present because I'm not enjoying all that's around me because I'm thinking about something else. I'm doing a physical activity here, but my mind is over there. And that really stuck with me is like a lot of times we kind of mask this as multitasking,
Mm.
right? And we say, oh, you're a good multitasker because you do six things at once. But really, is that good for us? Or is that the opposite of being?
Yeah.
And are we teaching people to not appreciate the present?
I don't know if we're intentionally teaching it. I think that we've gotten so far as a society with technology that there's a billion things we can be doing. That the paradox of choice is overwhelming. I mean, fuck, you go to the cereal aisle, dude. There's 400 different types of cereals. That we have so much choice with even the smallest decisions. There's so many options. There's so much that we can think about. And in media, we have 60,000 thoughts a day. So even before technology got here, our mind is still racing. Our mind, the brain is so small in our head, right? It takes up such a small, but it accounts for about 25% of our output as human beings. That's, a quarter of everything we do is just thoughts, mind. So we have to learn how to train that. And it's not something that's taught. It's not something that's taught in public schools. It's things that we have to do in order to be mindful. And there's multiple ways to get at that, right? Like you said, the trying to exercise mindfulness with walks, right? You have people like David Goggins who are a lot more and really use pain as a tool to be in the present, right?
Mhm.
Pushing himself. He's all about never runs with music, never runs with headphones, because sometimes you're not going to have it. He's in the present. When you're running ultra marathons and stuff, you're pretty forced to be pretty present, right? But then there's also alternative methods of really training yourself to just be, like meditation,
Yeah.
like yoga, things that are flowy or like that. So what?
But I think that's interesting, right? Because you look at even before this isolation, even before this was forced upon us, all of a sudden now you're seeing a lot of meditation apps become popular. You're seeing a lot of mindfulness training starting to pop up because I think we're kind of migrating back to that. Is starting to appreciate, and I can't remember what book it's from, or it's actually even a quote where it talks about the past is the past, and then the future is the future, and the present is your gift to yourself, right? Like
Mm,
and I probably butchered it, but something along those lines, where the present is actually your gift. So quit looking always in the past and planning for the future, and just enjoy what you have. And I mean, honestly, being locked up for how many ever weeks it's going to be and just sitting, I think is a great time for people to really spend some time with themselves and spend some time just really enjoying all the little things that are around them. But you got to be present. If you're always distracted, we're a society of distractions.
mm-hmm.
And I see it in my teenagers, like they can't go anywhere without music or TikTok. Like every they're always engaged, and we're guilty of it as well. But Andrea and I have been purposely like going on the walks with no music, and we talk for a little bit, and then we're just kind of silent. And when we're silent, it's just nice to look around and appreciate, a farm field, right? Right. You drive by it at 60 miles an hour, it has really no beauty. It has no life. It's a field. But then when you walk and you like just stop and you see like, man, this plant has like 6 bugs on it. Like that's life. What I mean? You actually
Mm-hmm.
see all the stuff that's around. You just see it differently. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we would unless we're actually forced to slow down, which is maybe what the world's trying to teach us.
Right. How often do you think, just on a regular day-to-day basis, that you are just being, that you're really present?
Not very much, to be honest.
And why do you think?
I think because I put a lot of pressure on myself to perform. I put a lot of pressure on myself to lead and to propel. So I spend a lot of my time trying to think, okay, what should I be doing that's going to pay dividends in the future? Like, and I'm quite honestly the opposite of what we're talking about. Like, I'm big into like setting myself up for the future, and I definitely got to get better at appreciating my small moments in the present for sure. You,
Mm.
how much time do you think you spend?
Oh, not much, man. I mean, I'm so like scatterbrained. Like my mind is always racing, man. I'm not very good at just being, but that's why I work on it so hard.
Yeah.
I've been trying to build a consistent meditation practice for about 3-4 years, and I've just recently, this last year, have finally caught a rhythm, and it's mainly because of an app. So for our listeners, I use this app called Insight Timer. It's
Okay.
free. I really like
Nice.
how it gives you, after you're done, it gives you little streaks, like, hey, 2, 3, 4 days in a row, whatever. My highest one is like 40 something that I got last year, 40 something days in a row, and you can do short ones. I had to start literally with 1 minute. meditations, dude, because I am so bad. And I was even worse at just sitting there and trying to just focus on my breath, just
Yeah.
focus on, and there's different ways that you can meditation, but that's a very basic principle is just, close your eyes and notice the air coming in through your nose. Notice the air coming. How does it feel? It's warm. To just focus on this one thing, and it was so hard for me, even just 1 minute. So that and a little meditation cushion, because then even sitting flat or cross-legged on the floor, you start feeling, oh, my back kind of hurts. Oh, my knee. Your mind's just going, and that
Yeah.
meditation cushion and insight timer really got me going, but not very often. I really have to work on it too. And I've even implemented little timers, man. I use them at work here in my office because my mind's always racing. I'm always thinking about the past or the future, just or racing to where sometimes during the day I'm like, all right, I really got to focus on this. Let me just start just a 15-minute timer. I'm just hammering out my emails, nothing else. Don't pick up my phone, nothing. And sometimes I still find myself like getting distracted within that 15 minutes, and I'm like, shit, no, the timer's still going. But I'm working on that, and that's the thing, because
Yeah.
I've realized that I have so much room to improve with being mindful and being in the present, and I think we all do.
Yeah, I think we have to. I mean, it's just crazy to miss all the small moments if you're constantly racing forward, and having kids and stuff sheds a different light on it for me because like there were a lot of small things I might have missed because I was at work, which is what you do, right? You take care of the family, so you're going to be sacrificing time, and you look back and a lot of the most fond memories we have are these small things. And I just sometimes I wonder like how many did we miss because we weren't paying attention,
Right.
because we were so worried about the future, like, oh, hurry up, we got to get here, and we missed like a humorous moment. Um, and I think really, man, this is a time to go inward. Um, just be like, quit watching the Tiger Man on Netflix and all these other shows that I see. I'm just like, gosh, like, one other time in your lifetime are you going to be forced into this isolation? For many of us, never, right? Like the only thing I can compare this to, and I've never been there, but this seems like jail,
Mm.
right? Where you're just forced to stay inside. You don't have all your normal
Of
freedoms.
course, you've never been to jail, Jared.
I don't wanna, but that's what like that. I think but you see, like people go to jail and they come out and they're like, okay, I read all these books. I'm a different person. And why do they say that? I think because they're forced to just focus on them because they're restricted in their interactions, they're restricted in freedoms, which is for the first time for many of us, that's what's happening now.
Hmm.
So we have a choice, right? Do we reflect inward, like you're saying, and just be, or do we continue to look external for all these distractions? And I would say if you spend all this time looking external, you're not going to come out of this much improved, to be honest.
Hmm.
Um, Whereas if you take some time to reflect and really look at where you're at and where you want to be, and your habits and your happiness, this can be very good for many people.
Yeah. I want to say something too about the Tiger Man, since he's kind of at the
Popular, huh?
popular. He's at the pinnacle of
Holy
media right now. I
smokes.
mean, number one show on Netflix. So I'm seeing all this stuff on social media. And I'm like, who is this interesting looking dude, right? So I go in and watch the first episode, and it doesn't engage me enough, and I'm not really a binge watcher of shows anyway. But one thing I did notice is what is he doing? Why is he so popular? Why do people gravitate towards him? And the answer is because he's good at just being. He's being real. And what happens when you just be is you truly become the most authentic version of yourself, because you're not thinking about the past. You're not looking at what so and so is doing. You're not what I guarantee you this guy, I don't even know his name, Tiger King. But I guarantee you Tiger King wasn't on social media all the time wondering what other people are doing, thinking about all these things. He was just being. And look, now I doubt it. I highly doubt that he ever thought, some little Florida zookeeper guy, that he's going to have the number one show on Netflix. No, he didn't care, but guess what? He's still capturing his content of him just being him. And
Yeah.
when you continue to exercise and just be, the thoughts that come into head, you're not clouded with all this external stimuli. You're getting real stuff that you really want, from God, from the universe, from whatever you want to call it. You're getting that genuine, raw, authentic fight. And I think that that's one thing that we can learn from this man. I mean, you take one look at him and you're like, all right, this dude isn't a conformer, right?
Yeah.
He's not a go with the crowd type of person. He's his own person. And because he's just being, and guess what? His career is something that kind of forces him to just be. You better be in the present moment with those Tigers. If you're thinking about the past and the future, pretty dangerous thing to do. So I think that's a lesson that we can take from this Tiger King guy. What do you
Yeah.
think?
I honestly have no idea. Other than the memes and the pictures of him, I've never watched 1 minute of the show. I'm probably never gonna watch it. I'm gonna take your word on it. But I think you hit on the head. He's not just being; he's authentically being.
Mm-hmm.
Right? He's being true to himself because he's not spending his moments trying to portray what's going to get me the most likes here, or what gets me the next interview there. Like he's being him, and I think that's honestly, I think that's why some people are uncomfortable with this time is because they're forced to really only spend time with themselves, and they may not like what they see in the mirror. They may not like who they've become
Mm.
because it happens to us in life. Sometimes we just get caught up and then we stop and we look back and we're like, well, wow, we're not happy. Like this isn't making me happy. Why am I in? Why do I pack my day full of all these meetings? Why do I feel like my kids have to be in 6 different sports and from the minute they're out of school until they go to bed, every half hour has to be accounted for, right? Like we get caught up in this race and sometimes we lose ourselves in it. Right. So I think that's honestly why a lot of people may not like this forced time is because they're not happy with who they are, which means there's time to change, right? Which means you could sit and reflect and, um, your kids don't need to have 6 after school activities to go from 4 to 8. They'll be fine with a half hour of downtime. They'll be fine with a day where they just come home and you let them practice just being. You know, but we got to take control of that, right? We got to take charge of, and maybe it's just where I'm at in my season of life, but this life is short, man. And you're guaranteed you're not coming out of this alive. So what you do between now and then is important. Do you want all your small memories to be of stress of running kids from here to there, and like that stress of organizing them, getting them going, or should we practice just letting them be? Because then in turn we could be, and we're actually teaching them that you don't have to have every minute of every day filled.
Yeah.
I think that's a big change in our society. Like, I don't know, you're a little younger, but when I was a kid, you went out and played. And your parents didn't set up your play dates. They didn't know where you were. Like for me, when the street lights came on, we had to get home, or we had to be close enough that if my mom came on our front porch and yelled dinner time, we could hear it and run home. But I got to practice like, sometimes I wasn't playing with anybody. I couldn't find a friend. So you just have to you play with your imagination, you make up stuff, you appreciate the woods. But we've gotten so much more to a society now where everything's structured and all these play dates and the kids have to be in all these organized activities. And I think a lot of that is we're putting like adult style business meetings, adult style days onto a kid, right? Like the kid gets out of school at 2:50, they got karate at 3:50 or jiu-jitsu at 3:15. They got, soccer at 5, dinner at 6, shower at 7:30. Right? Then there's like no time to just sit and be still. And I think that's probably the biggest lesson that can come out of this is look at yourself a little bit. Look at your habits. Are you filling the day because you're actually you might even be mindlessly filling the day because you think it's what you're supposed to do? Or are you content, like you said, being authentically you?
Mm-hmm.
And do you even know what authentically you means anymore? Have you gotten so far from you because you're doing all the things you think other people expect you to do that when you sit in this time, you're like, what do I do? Like, I'm going to freak out. I don't even know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's that's where a lot of us are at is, we spend time alone. It's like, oh, we're losing our minds, right? We need to be doing and instead of just being. And you actually notified me that we have some younger listeners on our
Yeah.
podcast, and when I think of the youth, man, I think of the cell phone. Every teenager got their phone out, and it's always been this way. Whether it's been a cell phone or a newspaper, we're always focused on something. And there's one thing you had just said earlier about the Tiger King was that he is authentically being, right?
Yeah.
But I would argue being that there's no inauthentic being. If you are just being, your natural authenticity is going to come out.
What about the people that are only being to so now what I mean by authentic being is like he does exactly what he does. He doesn't make excuses for it. He doesn't do it for likes and shares and to be popular. Like I guarantee, just the little bit I've seen of him, he was probably very unpopular in a lot of circles because, like you said, he was so different. That's to me authentic. Now, if I'm being what you think I'm supposed to be, right? I'm doing what you expect of me, but it doesn't fulfill me, it doesn't make me happy. To me, that would be like not unauthentically being, right? Like I'm
Right.
presenting this image, but it's not really me. And for a lot of people, I think they get lost in that image. They get lost in what they're supposed to be doing versus
Hmm.
what truly makes them happy.
Right.
We talked off air earlier a little bit about John Jones.
Hmm.
Right, here's a guy that has everything in the world title, millions of dollars, millions of followers, yet he's making very basic mistakes in life. The alcohol, the drug, the DUIs, the poor choices that usually somebody at his level doesn't have to make, right? Like he could hire a driver. He has all the means. And so for me, I even look at him, I wonder, is this the life he wanted for himself, or is he being what he thought everybody wanted him to be?
Mm.
And I think sometimes when we get lost in that, we hide it, right? We turn to alcohol, we turn to substances because maybe inside we know this is who we're supposed to be. So to ease that pain a little bit, right? You see that a lot in people that go through like a midlife crisis. Well, what is a midlife crisis? To me, it's when you get to a point in your life where you're like, shit, I'm halfway through my life, and this isn't who I'm supposed to be. I didn't want to be this.
Hmm.
And you make these drastic changes. Well, how did you get there? Well, you got there by going day through day, being who you thought everybody else wanted you to be, doing the things that everybody else, whether you got recognition for them, you got a paycheck for them, but it didn't fulfill you. So I don't know. I think there is difference between authentically being, which is knowing who you are and just being it, and being with a being trying to attract attention or trying to just fulfill what other people wanted you to be.
Hmm. So in my head, I separate those two as like if you're being what other people want you to be, then you're
Then you can't
doing.
be being.
You're doing.
Oh, true.
You're doing based on past things, right? When you're truly being, it's not based on anything in the past or what you think you might get out of it in the future. You're truly being in that moment, which takes me to the next question.
Yeah.
For you is how do you think we benefit from just being, right? Like you're a father, you have children. Let's say they have their cell phones, and you're like, you know what, guys, we're gonna test out just being. I'm taking your phones for the day. We're really gonna work on just being, and they tell you like why. What is the benefit of that? If I have my phone, I can be learning, I can be listening to podcasts, I can be doing all this. What is the benefit of being, Dad? What would you tell them?
Um, I would go back to a lot of what we've talked about before, like your interactions with the grocery store clerk. Just being allows you to recognize another human. It allows you to learn something about them and to share this moment that many times would just run past. Um, And it's also stillness, right? It quiets your mind a little bit, it clears some of the clutter. Um, for me, just being allows me to really think about what's important and what's not, and I think sometimes it's kind of it's a way to just purge out all the external noise you get that kind of confuses you and can distract you from who you want to be and who you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And it's funny because parents blast kids all the time, all the phones and the technology. Well, who bought it for them? Most of these kids ain't buying their own phones. Like they had to get them somehow.
Right. Which I don't think, phones are an amazing thing.
Yeah,
They're great, but balance, right?
I
Balance.
agree.
Like how do we balance being and doing?
Well, I think that's a lot of what the universe is trying to teach us right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now you're forced to not do. Like
Right.
think about this. Many employers are paying people to sit at home and not go to work
We're getting paid to be, bro.
if we choose
What?
to. Or many people are just going to go through this being distracted by whatever's on TV, whatever they can find, um, whatever they can post. And for me, I think that'd be a huge waste of this opportunity. Right? No, never in my life has anybody told me to stay home for a month with my family.
Right.
Now, granted, as a businessman with my businesses closed, this is awful. So I can sit and focus on that, or I can say like, well, this is a month that I'll get with Trey at 19 and Tay at almost 17. That I really get to spend time with them and learn about them and watch them that I wouldn't have had without this. I get time with Andrea now that we get to really just sit and talk to each other and go on walks and do stuff that's important to her that before might not have happened because we had other priorities. We're always hustling.
Yeah. And this is exactly what I hear people wanting and what I've wanted, right? More time at home, more free time. Oh, I never have enough time. I wish I had more time. I wish I could spend more time at home with the family. Oh, I wish I could just work from home. And now it's here. The
And
universe
they
has
don't want it.
responded. And now people don't want it. And people are freaking out. And I think it's just another testament to we are creators, right? Things in this world manifest for a reason. This isn't by accident. This
Right.
isn't by coincidence. The whole world is going through this, and we're more interconnected more than ever. We can see, we can open Zoom calls across the world. We can communicate,
Right.
and this is a huge lesson on just being that's
We can
currently
jump
in
on a
effect.
plane, fly across the world, and spread a virus that other people are not immune to.
Yep.
I mean, I think it's a good time to really reflect on, okay, we are just one small piece of this, but we're connected to so many small pieces around the world for probably the most connected we've ever been in the history of man.
For sure.
What is our responsibility with that? What do I need to be doing to make sure something like this doesn't happen again? Like, how can we build upon this forced connection in the future?
Hmm. Yeah.
What how do we come out of this better? Like I think it would be an absolute travesty if people come out of this in 30 days, 20 days, how many ever days it's going to be, and they're the exact same. They
Yeah.
didn't do anything to become better.
Yeah. Well, what do you think? What do you think would be a positive result of how we come out of this?
Respectful to other humans, appreciative of our actual fundamental need to interact with one another, a little kindness, a little empathy. Um, I mean, I think we lost that, right? Like we just took, and I know I did. Like I never once thought I would go to a grocery store, buy the last two of something. I never gave any consideration to the person behind me, not once. And I'm a pretty kind person, I think. But I never in my life had, if I took the last two creamers for coffee, had there not been a dude in the freezer just put more creamers up and the person behind me got there too. Like I never even thought of it. And now all of a sudden you go to the grocery store and there's two creamers and you might think about grabbing two and you see the person behind waiting two and you can kind of see on their face like, ah, fuck, it's gonna be gone. And maybe you just take one and you give them one. Like just small things that I think somehow we lost our way. This is being forced. And I think it starts, just like you said, Ali, with just being you, right? Like just taking some of this quiet time to reflect and okay, let's be honest, reflect on where you're at in your life. Is this the life you wanted? Or is this a life you're living because others expect to you? And really start digging deep and being who you're supposed to be and sitting with some of the silence and then just appreciating all that we have around us.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
I totally agree. I think that the real virus that's the scariest is the virus of fear and scarcity. Right? That's the true virus that has spread around amongst us
yeah.
to where half of this wouldn't be as scary or as serious without us spreading that fear. Without
But again, here, I agree with you. But now let's see, it goes back to exactly what you said earlier, Ali. Because I could never be, I turned to everybody else to tell me how to feel. I turned to CNN, Fox, ABC, NBC, MSN, all these news sources. Think about all the information sources out there. They all give me their opinions. And because I don't be, their opinions have all this weight. So they're showing me pictures of people buying toilet paper. Well, I gotta go buy a toilet paper. They're showing me
mhm.
pictures of panic. I should be panicking. Well, no, stop. Just be. What does this mean to you? Like for my family, we bought less toilet paper to share toilet paper, but we haven't ran out.
Yeah. Dude, I'm
I,
out of
I don't
toilet paper.
I will get you some. But you know what I mean? Like because you're not you, you're not authentically being you, you're subject to everybody else's opinion because you're looking externally all the time for that weight. Whereas, for me, I'll be honest right now, because I don't, you and I've talked about this before, I don't watch much mainstream news because I think it does just that. It sells. But to stay current on this, I usually check the news in the morning to see if there's any new restrictions, anything for Corona. And then I'll check it again in the evening. And those are my two times checking it because the rest of the day, I'm more in control of that information and how I respond to it.
Mhm.
Um, but I think it goes back to what you were talking about when people don't be, when people are always looking externally for how they're supposed to feel, what they're supposed to do next, then you're subject to other people's opinions that may or may not be true.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah, we're doing all this, watching the news, talking to people, doing this, doing that, and it decides how we're gonna be. We decide that. So yeah, I love that example to where how would people really be if they didn't watch the news, right? If they didn't have all of this media filling their heads, how would people be? I think it would be very different. And here's another thing too,
But in which they would have to share a different story,
yeah, their story,
right?
an
Because
authentic one.
if we were choosing to be and we take in a little bit of information and say, "No, I'm not going to panic. I'm not going to be afraid," they would not continue to promote that message because it's not making money. They would have to share right? They would have to find a new message to reach you. But because people react so much and they react based on what they're seeing there, they continue to pump more of it at you because it gets their desired result.
Yep. So I 100% agree on the human piece of how we are with each other, being more kind, being present, having compassion. But I think there's this whole other piece that I've just recently really started to realize is a big deal is the world piece, Mother Earth. And I just want to be the first to say that I have
Environment.
always been so bad at environment. I mean, I have been the stereotype of, I came from oil and gas industry, didn't have a recycle bin in my apartment before I moved to California. Did not really care. The only thing I will say is I would never really litter, throw shit out the window, but that's bare minimum. Like I don't
Right.
throw shit out of the window. until I came to Colorado, which is a lot more environmentally friendly place. And here in Old Town, you always have the people, lots of vegans, vegetarians, and learning more. Oh, wait, there's people that are vegans, vegetarians because of how animals are treated, blah, blah. If we did a better job, because, dude, animals have emotions. I mean, you have a dog and chickens, these wet markets in China. I've been to China. It is disgusting. No wonder there's these new viruses developing over there. You have dead animal carcasses, chickens in cages. They can't even move. Like the way that they have animals that you can buy meat over there is disgusting, dude. And
Yeah,
we
never been.
it's the same thing in the U.S. though. The way that we slaughter the slaughterhouses and stuff. I mean, it's horrible. It's gross. And don't get me wrong. I love me some beef. I'm probably never gonna give up beef or chicken or meat. But we can do so much better with how we treat not only animals but our environment as a whole. And this came from what, a little wet market. I know there's a lot of theories out, but that's the leading one. So for this example, we'll go with that. A little wet market in China, to where I guarantee you, if we had better practices with how we treat animals and use them for our food, this virus never would have happened in the first place. So I think that's a huge piece. Not only human beings, but what are we going to do for our environment?
But I think it ties back to your point earlier, right? If I, well, I just, for me, I run by a little dairy right up the road. Like I literally run by cows all the time. For years, I ran by with my headphones in, listen to what I was listening. I would look at them and keep going. But it goes back to like your thought of being, right? When I just run by them and see them, I can just see them as a food source. I can just see them like as a smelly, dirty animal. But lately, walking with Andrea, not having headphones and just being more being, I've literally stopped and like hand fed a couple of them. I've tried to
Oh,
pet them.
cool.
I literally stop and talk to them. And Andrea's like, oh my God, they're still dirty and smelly. And I'm like, I don't know, but I just want to talk to them. And
Yeah.
like I'm feeding them. And I think it goes back to what you're saying. When you just be, you allow others to be, right? And when I start reflecting and using this time to learn and to grow, when all of a sudden running past that cow, like I stop and I look and I see the differences between the six different black cows, and I see the tags in their ears with the numbers, and I wonder like, okay, how did they get numbered this? And like how did this, you know what I mean? Like you just start thinking, but I think you also appreciate that the others around you are allowed to be as well.
Mm.
Because I think when you find quietness for yourself, which is what meditation is supposed to teach, right? You're finding that quietness and staying right in the moment. I think you also start to appreciate it in others.
Hmm. And dude, animals, cows, those are the best teachers of just being, man. They're not
No
thinking about the
choice.
past or the future. They're just being in every moment. And to stop and pay attention to that is such a lesson. It's such a gift. You know?
Yeah, but I think, like you said, I think not just cows, but Mother Earth in general and the environment. You're seeing these reports of the cleanest water in Venice in years, and we saw one this morning. Pollution in Denver is drastically down because they're limiting us, and hopefully it wakes people up to realize our responsibility to our Earth.
Right.
And passing it on to our kids. What are we truly leaving them? But I think it starts when, like you said, when you be you, when you're spending time with you, you also start to realize the impact you make. Throwing one plastic bottle in the trash is, it's just one plastic bottle, not a big deal. But if everybody does it, that's millions. And where does that end up, right? Just throwing one thing out your window, that's just one wrapper, it's just me. But if millions of people do it, now your national park is completely disgusting.
Hmm.
So I think when you just be one, you're going to be the happier version of you because you're starting to be more authentic to what you're supposed to do. And two, I think you really reflect on what is your contribution to all this, because it's small acts, right? Like it's small acts that lead to great results. Small acts of kindness lead to big changes. Small acts of leadership lead to massive movements. Small acts of littering lead to global destruction. Small acts of anger lead to wars. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like it's not that, and I think that's what your point earlier was very well taken. Is being breaks everything down to the smallest granule. Being with this breath. Why is that breath important? Because without that breath, I don't have the next breath. I don't
Hmm.
worry about 2 breaths ago. That one's done. Like this breath is the one that gets me to the next breath. Right? Like we go to the very basis of breathing becomes important. Breathing becomes a place where we think. And then you reflect, how many days have I gone without even thinking about breathing?
Yeah.
Yet if I couldn't breathe, I couldn't have watched my son wrestle in the state tournament. I couldn't watch my daughter graduate. Right? But we so I think that's what this all comes back to is being makes you appreciate the smallest of moments.
Yeah. And becoming your most authentic self. When we truly be and we're not thinking about the future or the present, we start to uncover who it is that we really want to be. What do I really enjoy doing? Not because it's cool or because this you truly start to learn more about yourself when you're just being with you. So
And I think, yeah, bro, and I agree with that. And you also uncover your special gift.
yeah, what are you going to
Right? How
give?
many people know they have a unique talent, know they have a gift? Go back to your Tiger Man. What if he'd have conformed? What if he'd have just tried to live his life doing what everybody thought he would do? Well, I don't know what he's achieved in his life, but he wouldn't have any of it.
Hmm.
Whether his goal was to have a number one Netflix show or whatever, like he wouldn't have had any of it. What about all these crazy the guy that created Zoom? What if he'd have just thought, no, face to face meetings is always how it's always been. It's only going to be that way. I'll just conform. I won't throw out this new platform. Well, now we wouldn't have this ability,
Yep.
right? When you be, you allow yourself to be, and you allow your gifts to go. Like Zach Mercurio said, man, like um, we can't not matter. But if we don't know we matter to ourselves, how do we expect others to let us matter?
Exactly right.
So, dude, I'm honestly kind of why I have stress in this period because I don't know about my businesses. I'm doing what I can to make sure we're going to bounce back strong. And I believe that. I'm also pretty excited because I'm getting like an hour to an hour and a half every day of Spanish.
Nice.
Right. And I'm really enjoying it. I'm so much better at Spanish now than I was in high school. um, but I just enjoy it because I'm like, okay, this is who I'm supposed to be. Like I'm supposed to go communicate with people that before we would just pass each other because there was a barrier. Like I'm gonna get to speak to a whole different culture and learn. And I encourage people, sit with this time and be and reflect internally and come out of this thing better.
Yeah.
Just don't waste this time.
Let's do it. Let's do it. But before we hop into purposeful practice, I want to give just a couple suggestions on things that have really helped me be more. Like I said, I've been the worst of the worst of them, never just being. So things that have really helped me are our meditation practice for sure. Get the app Insight Timer, give it a try. Even start with just 1 minute, the 60-second meditations they have on there. Try that. Being in nature is huge. Without the headphones, without the podcast, nothing, just being in nature. I mean, we live in Colorado. I know right now we're supposed to be socially distant, but do what you can, getting outside, really appreciating nature, and a lot of things, creative things. Like I took up piano, Jared took up Spanish. Take up these things that really force your attention for you to be in the present moment when you're doing them because they're new things. Draw, write, a lot of things that we can do to help us just be, and you'll start to see the benefits of you truly getting to know and love yourself even more. So, you got anything before we jump into purposeful
No, I
practice?
agree, man. I love it. And sometimes the greatest lessons come out of the most difficult circumstances. And that's where we're at right now as business owners, as people, as humans in the world. So let's come out of this better and let's not make these same mistakes again.
Yeah.
So please, Remember to like, share, and rate, review this podcast. We're humbled by the growth. It's been amazing, but there's so many more people that we know would benefit from the message that we want to reach. So we can do that with your help. So please like, share, comment, review, and help us share this purposeful message with the rest of the world.
Amen. All right, team, we got some purposeful practice to just be. First part is think of a time where you were just being, and what did it feel like? And can you just be now? Part 2 is how often do you just be on a day-to-day basis? Part 3 is think about what keeps you from just being. And email your practice to us at onpurpose.official@gmail.com.
And remember, team, life is far too short to live any other way than on purpose. We will see you all again next week.